Channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network and presented in partnership with TrekCore.com. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on September 2nd, 2023, and is current through Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2, so beware of spoilers. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a regular news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in the Alex Kurtzman era of Star Trek, with the 12th television show and the 14th movie currently in production, and merchandise continuing to fill the Bajoran wormhole. So stick with me, and I'll help you sort the real facts from a lot of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone, and my guest this week is returning guest and co-host of the First Flight podcast right here on the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network. It's Abby Summer. Abby, welcome back to WeeklyTrek.
Thanks, Alex. It's always a joy to be here and talk Trek with you.
All right, Abby. Well, you know the drill. I want to know if something's got you excited about Star Trek at the moment. What's got you moving at Warp 10?
Okay, so this is going to surprise probably nobody, but I love sharing Star Trek with my girls. And we have watched Subspace Rhapsody probably, 3 or 4 times since it's come out a couple weeks ago.
Did you download the soundtrack?
Oh, yeah. The day of. We were camping in the woods, and I maybe organized a grocery trip into town so I could download the music and the episode day after to make sure everything was there. And then, it's just been obsessively watching, listening, all of that. If I don't have a podcast in my ear, it's that soundtrack. And when we drive in the car, that's what they want to hear. So my joy right now is that I'm sharing it with them, but it's also weaving into the fabric of their lives. Like, I caught my daughter singing Private Conversation the other day to herself in the mirror, doing both parts back and forth. We got big boxes from a delivery and they turned them into shuttlecrafts. Like, it has just been really joyous to watch them latch onto something like that, and that they're singing. And like, it's so fun to watch them have so much emotion for something that I love so much, and they're into it. And I love that Strange New Worlds has so many powerful female characters, because when they're playing that, they have choices. And like, my little one always wants to be Una. My older one, she's like, well, I don't know, maybe I want to be Chapel. No, but Uhura can do all that stuff with the buttons so fast. And it's just, I love that Star Trek has given me that avenue to show them how I would love them to be when they're older. And it's just been constant and sprinkling through their lives, and it has made my August better.
And do you have a family favorite song?
Oh, that changes. I have to say, we really do enjoy singing the little Klingon K-pop bit. Like, we will just stop what we're doing, crank it, and jam out to it. But everybody has a different favorite song, and it changes. But we like that one. We like Status Report, because we all at the end like to look at each other and go, why are we singing? And Keep Us Connected is really a fun one too. But it changes every day. And the only one that my daughters are not such a fan of is I'm the X, because they don't like Spock being so emotional. Like, they watch those old scientists with me, and they haven't seen tons of TOS, but when they did the close-up to his crazy smile, they're like, ugh. That's not right. And they don't want him to be sad. So they're like, this is the sad Spock song. Let's go to a happier song. But I love the song.
You can't beat any of the Anson Mount lines for singing in the shower, I've found.
Yeah, see, I really am belting out the Christina Chong ones when I'm in the car by myself. Like, it hits my sweet spot. But yeah, these are great musical songs. And I mean, I've talked about it in other places, and I'm sure people will talk about it for years. But what a gift. And what a gift to bring my family together in a different way, and other families too. So I still can't get over it, and I hope they keep singing it for many months to come.
That is wonderful. Well, let me tell you what I'm feeling good about Star Trek this week, which is I've been trying new things this year. So I built my first model kit, and now I was a game master for my first Star Trek Adventures adventure.
Woo-hoo.
I've been playing it for the last couple of years and having a lot of fun. We have a great Grandmaster, Chris, and a great group who gets together once a month. And, Chris has been doing it for 2.5 years. And, it takes some preparation to ensure that everybody else has a good time. So he had asked if it was possible for him to take the summer off and switch positions from being the person in charge of the game to being a player. And did anybody else want to sort of take over for a few months, like running the game. And so I volunteered because I thought that might be fun. And yeah, so I did my first session. We created a whole new ship and a whole new crew. Of course, you, Abby, being an Enterprise fan, will be pleased to hear that it's set in the Enterprise era.
Woohoo!
Just post the Romulan War. And
Nice.
yeah, we had our first adventure, and it was a little bit quantum leapy, and it was a little bit Enterprise-y, and it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I think Star Trek Adventures is really, really fun. I've now seen it from both sides, from being the game master and from being a player, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And yeah, I have already committed to doing another adventure with the good ship Atlantis NX-05. And yeah, so that'll be next month, and then we'll see where things go from there. So yeah, I've been having a good time, and it's been nice to, as I say, to try some new things and express my Star Trek fandom in a different way. So that's what's got me feeling good about Star Trek this week.
It's so fun. And I've loved watching your constructing of ships and your little bits that you're posting on Twitter or X or whatever it's calling itself now. And
Twitter.
I like peeping. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's always going to be Twitter to me.
Yeah, right.
But I like peeking in on your joy. And I don't have the time to do either of those things. So I'll just live vicariously through you and be really glad that there are places for everybody to find what gives them joy in the fandom.
It helps not to have kids, I think.
Yeah.
is my conclusion onto that one.
Well, I will take the joy of watching my little sing Klingon K-pop, and you can take the joy that you're playing the game and being the game master, and we're all good. It all balances
Exactly.
out.
All right. Well, with that, let's turn to the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
Well, despite the ongoing writers and actors strike, Paramount have announced that they have plans for Star Trek Day coming up later this week on Friday, September 8th. In lieu of the live event in Los Angeles that has been the hallmark of the last several years, this year Jerry O'Connell will be hosting a new online special that will broadcast on Paramount Plus, celebrating the show's 57-year anniversary. With a focus on Star Trek Discovery, the special will also preview Lower Decks' fourth season that will have just premiered the day before, and provide a look back on 50 years of Star Trek animation. Star Trek Lower Decks is heading to theaters. 4 episodes of the show will be shown on the big screen in special free screenings in Columbus, Dallas, Denver, Philadelphia, Phoenix, San Diego, St. Louis, Washington, D.C., Vancouver, Calgary, and London. And on 8 p.m. Eastern on Friday, September 8th, the date and time that Star Trek first premiered in 1966, CBS will be showing the first 2 episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds on the regular CBS network. Here's hoping that the writers and actors get the residuals that they deserve for that. In addition, we expect a few licensing announcements, as there have been in previous years, though no information yet on what those might be. We'll just have to wait till Friday to find out. Abby, are you looking forward to this week's Star Trek Day?
It is one of my favorite annual holidays. Because it's just a little slice of finding your people, right? And I know this one isn't going to be as big and dramatic as it has been in the past because of all the strikes. And we're a union household here. We're both teachers, so I fully 100% support them. And I'm glad that it seems like Paramount, that doesn't always seem to think Star Trek things through very well, at least had the forethought to pre-tape some segments to have things before this all went into place, just in case, or to have, maybe that was the plan all along. But either way, it looks like it's just going to be fun. And I'll be at work all day, so I can't be driving to a screening of the Lower Decks in the theater somewhere that's quite far from my house, but I can't wait to see the pictures and hear about how fun those are. I love that they're doing that they're putting it up on the big screen and giving people a chance to watch it together. It's such a cool experience to watch Trek together. I mean, I remember when we've watched Trek together, and it's fun. You get that. It's like going to a concert, all these people having the same communal experience. So I'm glad they're doing that. And I'm glad they're looking at animation. I know, again, that's probably a business decision because they don't have the same kind of striking things going on as all the rest of the actors, so we can pump up the animation. But as someone who really likes all the animated stuff, even TAS, I mean, I got a little soft spot for that there. I'm excited to see what they're going to do. And I'm also excited because if you watch the little preview that they put out that's got, Jerry O'Connell introducing it, it seems like we're also going to get Eugene Cordero and Tawny Newsome watching Star Trek and talking about it or something like that. They're looking at a screen, so I assume they're watching Star Trek. And that seems like it's going to be fun. Just listening to Tawny Newsome talk Trek is something I would do for hours. So the two of them together talking about Trek, that's on the list for sure. And I'm glad they're putting it on broadcast TV. I mean, the more people that can get eyes on Strange New Worlds, the more likely we are for it to be a very long-term thing. And I want that deeply. So hopefully it will bring more people in and do everything it can be and just be a celebration of something that has meant so much to so many people for 57 years.
Yeah, I will assume that their special was recorded before the strike started, which would make sense. That they would have had the forethought to have done that, considering the strike looked pretty likely in, sort of the weeks and months leading up to the start of it. And so it's great that we have something. And yeah, I'll be at the DC screening. Yeah, I would imagine Columbus is probably a little far of a drive for you for 4 episodes of Lower Decks. What is that, probably like 16 hours in the car or something like that?
Yes, and it would be the Friday of the first week of school. So it's really not happening in my life.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that they're free. In some ways, I personally might have preferred they did it through something like Fathom Events, where they could have gotten it into more theaters, but there would have been a cost associated with it. But it is cool that it's free. It's cool that it's also international in Canada, and there's one in London as well. So Canadian and UK fans have the opportunity to watch it, though I guess not if you're on the east coast of Canada, because the nearest one is Calgary. But hey, I mean, choices about cities aside, is certainly easy to gripe about that. It's wonderful that they're doing it anyway. I'm sure it's definitely costing the studio money, right? They're basically renting out these theaters for an evening to offer these sort of screenings for free. So, there is a cost associated with doing that, which is being borne not by the fans attending, but being borne by CBS. So I'm excited to go and see the episodes of Lower Decks that they've picked. I presume it will be a couple, potentially the 2 episodes that premiered the day before, and then 2 others from different points in the series, but I really don't know what to expect. Also, not yet sure about what, they said there would be more news about these promotional shorts coming in time for Star Trek Day. That's not kind of fully, they've not pulled the curtains back on that, as of today, September 2nd. So hopefully we'll learn a little bit more about that in the next few days coming up. And yeah, Star Trek Day is coming, and just as you say, it's a fun opportunity to celebrate the franchise and the community of Star Trek fans who enjoy it very much. And whether that means you're going to watch The Man Trap or however you're going to plan to spend your Star Trek Day, it's fun that even with the strikes, the studio has found a way for fans to get together and to celebrate and to probably have a little bit of news. I expect we'll probably get a Discovery season 5 clip in in the Jerry O'Connell special, or maybe a trailer. And yeah, we'll see what the day brings in terms of licensing and merchandising stuff. I would imagine, maybe there'll be another XO6 figure pre-order and some stuff like that. Last year, they announced the Pottery Barn stuff. I can't believe that was only a year ago. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be some other stuff like that to look forward to. But yeah, Star Trek Day is here, and it's coming, and it's only a few days away. And then, we're on to Lower Deck season 4 and figuring out the rest of it.
Speaking of merchandising and stuff, I hope that there's a huge drop of stuff that we all can order. Because how many times when we were watching Strange New Worlds this season were we like, they should make that, they should sell that, they should do that. And this would be the day, everybody's hyped, everybody's pumped. Even if they only made the little beanies that Spock wore in charades to try to cover his ears in the transporter room. Winter's coming, right? That would be perfect. It's affordable. It's easy. It's fun. I would love to see everybody coming out of those screenings wearing a beanie, and I would go buy one immediately. So please take my money, Paramount. Give me the merchandise.
It will be also interesting to see this special, right? One of the purposes of the special is celebrating 50 years of Star Trek animation. We'll be somewhat curious to see the extent to which Prodigy factors into that. I would imagine the plans to do a 50-year celebration of Star Trek animation were probably drawn up prior to the cancellation of Prodigy, and because it does feel a little strange that it's you've got Star Trek the Animated Series, and you've got Star Trek Lower Decks, and it's yep, and you've got Star Trek Prodigy, don't forget that one. So we'll see how much that shows up in this online special, in what they're planning in terms of this animated celebration over the next, few months, year, however, whatever this ultimately ends up being. But yeah, it's certainly a small, well, not a small amount of awkwardness. There's a giant amount of awkwardness, but there is some awkwardness connected to that. And
it's the cloaked elephant in the room, right?
It is the cloaked elephant in the room.
Or the cloaked Murph in the room.
Yeah,
and when you look at the big poster about the animated celebration, Murph is kind of shoehorned in there. And I personally was thrilled to see Michael and her father from The Girl Who Made the Stars thrown in there, because that's a personal favorite of ours around here. So I'm hoping that there's something more. And Well, I'll talk more about Prodigy when we get to Prodigy, but there is no reason not to honor something that has done so much beautiful work in the past 2 years. So I hope that they just buckle up, and maybe this will be the big announcement we're all waiting for, right? Wouldn't that be wonderful if it coincided? Unlikely, but hope is eternal.
Yeah.
Just like cake.
Well, let's do it. Let's talk Star Trek Prodigy.
Woo.
The Save Star Trek Prodigy campaign continues apace, with Star Trek fans successfully raising money to fly a Save Star Trek Prodigy banner over the headquarters of several major streaming networks. And in addition, Kevin and Dan Hageman spoke to TrekCore at SCLV a few weeks ago about the ongoing efforts to save the show. Responding to comments he made on the stage that he is 99% confident that Star Trek Prodigy will find a new home, Kevin Hageman said, quote, "When interested parties with offers come forward, we're going to be part of that conversation. But right now, it's all at a super high level. The heads of CBS are talking to the heads of, hypothetically, of course, Netflix or Amazon or whoever. All we know at our level right now is that there's active talks happening right now. Everyone, not just us, everyone, whether people within Secret Hideout or within CBS, everyone is supportive and very, very confident that we will find a home. I just don't know when or where." Dan Hageman also talked about where the show was in its season 2 production schedule. He said, quote, "I think we're going to be wrapping up episode 20 in December, which isn't something that has changed. It's the same calendar we've been working with since before the announcement. That didn't change anything, which is a huge sign of support from Secret Hideout." And Kevin Hageman talked a bit about the decision to feature the Voyager A in season 2, saying, quote, "Oh boy, there was great discussion about which ship to use. As you know, these ships are like characters, so we had to also make sure we chose a ship that wasn't going to be used by the other Trek shows. We landed on the Voyager A, and we're so happy we did." Abby, we are 2.5 months on from the cancellation of Star Trek Prodigy. How are you feeling at this stage about the show's future?
Well, first of all, we absolutely adore Prodigy in this house. All 4 of us. Like, it has been the show that we all have sat down and rewatched the most together. My girls are into it. We play with the toys. We love it. I am hoping so much that all this positive news that we're hearing from the Hagermans and from Aaron Welke and from everybody means that this is coming somewhere. Because when we saw that little clip that came out, the first, 4.5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Well, we assume the first 4.5 minutes, some sort of 4.5 minutes of the show. We watched it and my girls were so excited, and it stopped and they both looked at me and goes, "Well, when can we see the rest?" I don't know.
We'll see.
You can't do that. We didn't even see Gwen. I know. It's okay. And then we had to talk about the doctor and his mobile emitter and all that. So this is such a beautiful show. And the fact that that banner flew over, like every time I saw a picture or a video of it or a tweet or a mention, like this got big press and big news because we're not the only family sitting here going, we need this. We want this. So I love the Save Prodigy campaign. I love that Star Trek fans do big things to save what they love. And it doesn't seem like the pressure is abating. I think I saw that it's almost 34,000 signatures on the petition, which just dwarfs what Strange New Worlds, when people wanted a Strange New Worlds show because they saw Pike and Spock and Una on Discovery. That petition wasn't nearly as much. So I'm hoping that this is giving all the higher-ups the feeling that this is successful, this is profitable, this is something people want. And it feels almost like you're working in conjunction with the actors are striking for the things they want to need. We are pushing for what we want and need. It's a power to the people thing. So as hard as it is to wait and have this uncertainty, it's been really powerful to see how many people have come together and the community that has formed around saving Prodigy. I think it's hopeful. It's really hopeful. And I've had the privilege to talk to Aaron Welke and the Hangermans, and they are so genuine and open and honest. I don't think they would be saying things with the spin that they are if they really didn't think this was going to happen. So fingers, toes, and everything else I can crossed that this happens sometime soon. But until then, thank goodness we have 20 great episodes to watch and toys to play with. I have a friend who made a rock talk since that one doesn't exist yet. So yes, again, bring on the merchandise, bring on the episodes. Please, 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 please. And fly another plane if you have to. Like that's amazing.
Yes, 20
Absolutely
great
amazing.
episodes that at least you now can watch.
Yes. Oh, yes. That was me ranting and my head almost exploding. Like, no. You don't get to take those, especially since some of our favorites are the back half of that season. Like, there's so many good things in there and so many lessons. So I hope when it does come back too, here's my my little personal hope. I hope they continue doing all the educational and pieces for the kids that they did with it, the little lessons that Kate Mulgrew was doing after each one on YouTube, little 1-minute things talking about, the moral of the story, the lesson, what you should get out of it. My kids still watch those. It's great. Yeah. And Erin McDonald, Dr. Erin, one thing that we have to be so grateful for is that Prodigy brought her more to the prominence of all of us. Like she had done things before, but now she's in Prodigy. That's amazing. She's in Star Trek Online now, too. So is Murph. So here's some hopefulness. But she did science explanations for some of the stuff with Prodigy. That's what you need to do. This is how you build fans. This is how you get buzz, is that you're doing the in-universe and the out-of-universe stuff. So I'm sending so much energy to all the Prodigy people. And let's keep up this pressure, because it's not going away, the desire to have more Prodigy soon.
Yeah, and we have the Blu-ray release coming up in a couple of weeks. And I think it was not in this interview, and I can't remember who it was who said it. It might have been Aaron Waltke, who in one of the other interviews he's done recently said something about how, CBS Home Entertainment were very happy with the season 1 Blu-ray sales, particularly, I think obviously we saw following the cancellation announcement came out that they were that lots of retailers were selling out their stock of the first half of season 1 Blu-ray availability, and many of them have since been able to restock. But there was obviously a big surge in popularity, and I think a lot of interest in the back half of season 2, because this sort of has lodged in many fans' minds the reminder that if you don't have it on home media, there is the possibility that the studio will come along and will just take it away from you over the course of a weekend and not let you have it anymore, which is exactly what happened with the back half of Star Trek Prodigy season 1. So yeah, very positive about the home media sales. Obviously, Star Trek fans are some of the most creative fans in the world. And when they want to get something done, they will get something done. So if that means flying a banner over the headquarters of the streaming networks, great. It got a Hollywood Reporter write-up, and that's not nothing. And I think, it is, there is obviously this sort of continuing community of fans who are very interested in ensuring that this show continues, who are, it sounds like, continuing to do all the right things and say all the right things and buy all the right things that will hopefully kind of, sort of push the 99% confidence in Prodigy having a new home into the 100% reality that it does have a new home. And that, as nothing moves quickly in Hollywood, especially with everything being in such turmoil at the moment, I think that probably slows things down even further. But, we know that season 2 is now only a couple of months away from being entirely complete, and that, hopefully there will be an announcement soon about the future home of Star Trek Prodigy. And at that point, we just sort of, rather than kind of focus on that existential question of will we get the opportunity to see it or not, then once we know that we will, be able to pivot to just supporting the show in its new home and making sure that it gets the attention that it deserves for then whatever comes next, right? They've not taken the season 3 off the table in terms of Paramount Plus has said they won't be airing the show anymore, but that I also saw this discussion that was Star Trek Prodigy is not technically cancelled, it just doesn't have a streaming home at the moment. And if somebody wants to host it, and then if there is an opportunity to figure out who gets to pay for what in terms of a season 3, that is a possibility. Obviously, it will depend on how well it does in its new home, but nothing is off the table, and everything is in the control of A, obviously Paramount, but B, also that the fans have a role to play in terms of seeing what that future ultimately is.
Well, when the renewal order comes through, or the pickup order, or however they phrase it or call it, which I'm going to manifest right here, you will probably be able to hear me scream in joy from time zone away, because it will just be glorious. When the cancellation came through, my phone blew up with everybody going, "Are you okay? Have you seen? Oh my God, did you tell the girls?" So you're going to hear the opposite of that. And we're going to just wait for that joy and amplify it even more so that they know how happy we are. It's the best thing to do.
Well, Star Trek Strange New Worlds' producing director, Chris Fisher, appeared on Trek Movies All Access podcast to talk all things Strange New Worlds, and provided a bit of an update about where the show stands with the ongoing writers and actors strikes. "I was going to direct the premiere episode," Fisher said about season 3. "I had storyboarded pretty much the entire first episode. That's how close we were to starting shooting. We were one day away from flying flying the actors in, we were like, do we fly the actors in? And that's when it went above my pay scale. Fisher also talked about how much work had been finished to prepare the augmented reality wall, which he supervises for season 3. I think we were up to episode 307 with AR. We had a document, here's your 10 genres, here's your 10 worlds, and we were into 307 when we shut down, and we were doing some exciting stuff. We found a way now to use the AR wall in almost every episode. We were almost done with season 3 by the time we shut down for the strike. Everything I've heard from the studio is that they can't wait to get back on the horse as well. Once the strike is over, fingers crossed, I don't think it'll be long until we're back up and running. And Fisher revealed that the producers have a new plan every month for how to get season 3 shooting underway as soon as the strike ends. Myself and the producers up in Toronto, we kind of say, okay, if the strike ends at the end of this month, what would happen? What would we need to do then to get going? And then once the strike passes that, then we set it for the next month. We're not that many weeks away from being able to start, absent all the other conflicts which may have arisen by now. Abby, are you excited for Star Trek Strange New Worlds season 3?
Yes. I don't want to scream that into my microphone here, but yes. Oh my goodness. The fact that the second half of this cliffhanger is out there somewhere and somebody knows what the ending is, and it might be absolutely dwarfing the summer of Best of Both Worlds, is not far from my mind ever. Like, I would really like to know the resolution of this. I have thought a great deal about it. I'm sure we'll think about it a great deal more. And this season of Strange New Worlds was so good. Like, even the episodes that I don't think were absolutely fantastic were still really good. And this cast is amazing. The visuals are amazing. This AR wall, it's so beautiful. And it's really revolutionized what they can do and how they can do it. And I like that sometimes I know it's the AR wall, but I don't care. And sometimes I don't know if it is, because that's how good it is. And I love that they're talking about big swings again next season, because you know what? Maybe everybody didn't like every episode this season like I did, but that's okay, because we're coming up on eventually, hopefully, 1,000 hours of Star Trek. If you don't like this one, go find something else. But big swings are the things that make it fun. Those are the episodes you still talk about decades later. And he said at one point that the swings they're taking in season 3 were scaring him. And every time they put a new world up there, it's scary because is it going to work? Can we do this? And the answer has been, yeah, it really does. And Strange New Worlds has so much momentum right now. I hope that we end the strike soon positively for everyone who deserves compensation for the glorious work they've been doing, and they get back to it. I think everybody's excited. I think the actors, the directors, the tech people, the musicians, like everybody's excited. This has really hit a sweet spot for so many people. So I'm ready for season 3 whenever it comes out. And please, please, please don't kill Captain Patel. Like, find put her in the buffer. Hello, put her in the buffer. We've done this twice in 2 seasons. Please don't kill her. I really like her. I know she's not endgame, but I appreciated she didn't die the end of this season, because it seemed like that's where it was going. And I like when Star Trek surprises me with stuff and I don't see what's coming. I'm like, oh, she's dead. And then she pulled up her sleeve. I'm like, oh, she's really dead. But she's not yet. So we have a chance. And I'm wondering, they said they storyboarded, they've got everything going. If we do have a long downtime, if it is 18, 24 months until we see it again, are they seeing the reaction from season 2? Are they going to tweak a few things? Are they going to add a few things? Are they going to change a few things? Because they do kind of have this lull now. I don't know how locked in stuff is. If they've already done AR walls for 7 episodes, obviously they're not going to do too much. But you know, when they're seeing, oh, the fans responded to this, they resonated with this. This is what we didn't expect. Because they said that a lot about season 1 and season 2, that they were filming 2 while 1 was going. They didn't know all of the things. Well, now you do. So it's a chance to make season 3 even that much better with just little tweaks and improvements. So that's my silver lining of all this. And I'm glad they're ready to go, because I'm ready to watch it.
Yeah, it is obviously, like, we don't know how the writers' deals, etc., work, but presumably what is likely to happen is the writer's strike will end at some point and the actor strike will continue for a period of time after that. And so if there is the ability and flexibility to continue working on season 3 scripts based off of the reaction of season 2, like, they could, if they wanted to, potentially, right? Like if the deals allow for that. Certainly the showrunners could, right? Like Akiva and Henry Alonso Myers are both writers, and they're Star Trek Strange New Worlds as showrunners. So like, they could continue to work on scripts if they wanted to. I guess it's just a question of like, A, how happy are they with the scripts as they are already? If they're pretty happy with them, you could see them probably wanting to leave it alone. And B, how long does that strike ultimately go on for? Because I think as soon as both strikes wrap up, there's going to be a real interest in moving as quickly as possible into getting that filmed. I also wonder a little bit, especially as the strikes, sort of inch on, and it looks like the writer's strike, yes, there was some hope related to negotiations a few weeks ago. That seems to have died down, because there's not really been much movement towards a resolution, and the studios have been doing some stupid stuff. But if it looks like Strange New Worlds season 3 is potentially, certainly I think at this stage you would say not until late 2024, potentially even early 2025. If that even starts to inch further forward, does that potentially mean they look at bringing something back like the short treks, right, as a way of giving people something, film those at the start of Strange New Worlds season 3, and then you've got, these little pint-sized things that you can put out at the end, in the fall of 2024, while the main Strange New Worlds season 3 is still being worked on for a 2025 delivery. I don't know, right? Like there's lots of possibilities, but I would imagine, just like, Chris was sort of saying, every month they come up with a new plan about what happens. Well, if the strike ends this month, I think, it's like every month those plans probably change too. And, like it really, what's possible and what will happen will really only come into focus once the strike itself is resolved. And just at this point, I think everybody's just kind of waiting around for that to happen and to see exactly when and how this ultimately gets resolved, which might not be for a little while longer at this stage.
Yeah, when you read all the background of the strike, it's disappointing how greedy the studios are.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's how I feel most of the time when I hear about strikes and workers uniting around stuff. It's like, come on. And Star Trek is a show about hope and being good to people that are different than you and equality and all that. Like they're striking for those things, for fairness and for justice and for, honest recognition and compensation, which is 100% what they should be. So I hope that Star Trek can maybe inspire them to do that. And the fact that they're ready to go right after, awesome. And I 100% endorse your idea of more short treks. Like I have a list if anyone ever wants me to, inspire Star Trek writers, because I don't know that I could write it, but man, do I have ideas of what I would like to see in short trek. And that would be a fun thing, because we are going to hit a point. They're saying we're just going to let them all lose their homes at Christmas, which is rude and awful, but they're going to run out of programming, like reruns. Or what are they calling them now? Bonus rebroadcasts, which is a nice word for rerun. Like those aren't going to satisfy people for a while. And there's only so much reality TV that, whether you're watching people fight or build houses or, find antiques or whatever, you get to a point where people want to watch some escapism, and Star Trek is a great place to do that. So if they start up day one after the strike is done, or, week 3 or however the logistics actually take, please do.
And lastly this week, Hiya Toys have announced and started taking pre-orders for a new line of 3.75-inch Star Trek action figures from the Kelvin timeline. These exquisite mini 1/8 size action figures, which retail for $25 a piece, are modeled after the characters' appearances in the Star Trek 2009 film. So far announced and released for pre-order include Captain Kirk, Mr. Spock, Dr. McCoy, and Prime Spock, Leonard Nimoy Spock. The figures include accessories and alternate hats and can be pre-ordered either directly from Hiya Toys or from online toy retailers like Big Bad Toy Store. Abby, what do you think about these Kelvin timeline action figures?
Well, I always love the Kelvin timeline getting some love, because as someone who loves Enterprise that doesn't get a lot of love, I feel like the Kelvin timeline doesn't get as much love as other things do. And there's so much good there. And somewhere I know you have a promise not to talk about another movie in that timeline until there is actual news. But, you don't ever take that kernel of hope out of the back of your head. It looks less and less likely, but who knows? And, fingers crossed. But how fun to get some merchandise and some things for the Kelvin timeline, because there are so many people who discovered Star Trek through those movies. And they have never felt the love that some of the other shows and other pieces of the Star Trek universe have. So yeah, go for it. Do I think these are the best likenesses? Not particularly, especially McCoy. He looks a little square in the head, but these are mock-ups. These are models.
And they're small
and
action figures.
Yes,
3.75 inch action figures are pretty small.
Exactly. So you know what? Anything where they give us more Kelvin stuff, bravo. And like I said, Paramount has so dropped the ball on all these merchandising opportunities over the past, since New Trek has started coming back out. There are so many things that we are all going, we will give you money, make this exist. So this is maybe the beginning of some more Kelvin timeline stuff. And I hope that eventually they do the whole crew, because I would like to see everybody in there. I wouldn't mind a Simon Pegg Scotty.
Yeah, they were at San Diego Comic-Con and they had prototypes for more characters. I think they had a prototype. I want to say that a prototype Keenser, and I think they did have a prototype Scotty.
That's awesome.
And I mean, obviously, all of that depends on how well the first round sells. And it's Star Trek 2009 action figures in 2023. I guess we'll see. I will say I pre-ordered all four. I am actually particularly excited for the Leonard Nimoy Prime Spot action figure. They just announced that one a couple of days ago. That one actually looks like really quite good. I think the likeness for Leonard is good. The thing with these, with 3.75 action figures, is when you're looking at like big pictures online, it sort of warps your perception of what you're looking at, because you're looking at a picture that's bigger than what the actual product itself will be. It's a bit different from like the 1/6 action figures, that the much larger ones that are like 12 inches tall rather than 4 inches tall. So the likeness stuff it really will just sort of depend on like what does it look like when you actually get it in. But I'm excited by these, as starting with the Kelvin timeline, sort of unusual. I think we had someone at TrekCore who talked to the Hired Toys people, and they said yes, they are starting with the Kelvin timeline, but they do have a license to do anything they want to. So that does mean that there is the potential for more that goes into other stuff. And unfortunately, it does look like Playmates Toys have announced that they will be doing a new Enterprise D, and there was one other thing they were doing. I think it was like the next generation Type 2 phaser or something like that. But they have not yet announced they're doing any more action figures. There were a couple of prototypes that were shown at a convention in London earlier this year, Next Generation, LaForge and Worf. But and 7 of 9 from Voyager, and Discovery version Pike and Spock. But they've not done anything to sort of move towards like announcing or releasing those. They'd said the second wave was coming in early 2023. It's now late 2023. You have to wonder if sales for those were potentially not good enough for them to do a second round. As I say, they do have a few other things coming, but not in the action figure realm. So hey, maybe it's Hired Toys, right? Maybe they're the ones to step in and do these sort of smaller action figures that are not $200 like the X06 ones, even though I love the X06 ones and have most of them. But yeah, hey, it's exciting anytime a new licensee steps into the Star Trek world, and I'm going to support these ones, and we'll see how they turn out. As I say, I'm particularly interested in getting the Prime Spot, because I think that one looks great.
Well, as someone who has a family that actually plays with the action figure toys, and I always did when I was a kid, way back in the 90s, like way longer than I probably want to admit on a recording. But I like that these look like they're going to be fun to actually use. They have stuff with them. They have accessories. There's tricorders, there's phasers, and that's what makes kids fall into that world again too. So I'm hoping that these do keep coming, and that maybe I would love to see a company. And I know I am not a business person, and this would probably not make the money that they're looking for in a return. But if some company would make all of the people in action figures that weren't like the big three from each series, like let's get a Hoshi, let's get, a Rom, let's get just these weird little background characters, or the people that are still main or supporting cast, but not the biggest ones. I bet you there's a huge market. I mean, everybody has a Kirk. Yeah. Everybody has a Picard, and that's okay, because there's a reason for that. But I bet you there's a whole bunch of people out there who would buy all the odd weird ones. I mean, look at when Eagle Moss made all the weird ships. They sell out. So there's untapped market here. So hopefully if these sell really well, we can get some of those other ones too.
Yeah, X06 is really the only one that's been able to do things like that with releasing characters like, they just shipped Tom Paris to people. They did Harry Kim. They've done Shran. Some of them sort of obscure, I mean, not necessarily obscure, but characters that have not really been made before. And yeah, well, fingers crossed for higher toys, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, go out there, and if you're interested in Star Trek action figures, if you like the Kelvin timeline, I think these are pretty cool. 3.75 action figures, the price is decent. The size is, is a good size for your shelf. So go for it, is my recommendation.
And they'll fit in with the other action figures you have too, because if you live in a house with kids who play with action figures, all of your different things, like your Star Trek, your Star Wars, your Paw Patrol, your My Little Ponies, they're all having a party in the castle someday. So it's nice that these are the size that are going to fit in with everybody else too.
All right, well, we've talked about the facts, and now let's speculate on what's going to happen in the future of Star Trek.
You make some very good points, Captain. But it's still all speculation and theory.
So each week, my guest and I give you a wish or theory we're nurturing about any of the shows or the future of the franchise. So Abby, let's hear your theory or wish for this week.
Okay, so I think you were reading my mind talking about new short treks, because I have a wish that is more short treks in general, but specifically, I've been thinking about this one, and I don't even remember where the kernel started, probably 6 months, a year ago, but I would love a short trek that is animation of racing. Like, I want it to be a gigantic race of all the pilots from all the different series. Like,
cool.
I want to see Detmer, I want to see Paris, I want to see Mayweather, I want to see Ortegas, I want to see all those people, kind of like a Mario Kart style thing, where it's just they're having a big old race. It could be a holodeck, it can be, I don't care how they do it, but it would be so much fun, because we always talk about, the pilots, and they've got swagger, and how much fun would it be? And they could all do the animation voices, and it would be silly, but it would be so much fun. And I don't think it will ever happen. I'm sure that there'd be all sorts of licensing issues and rights, and you definitely couldn't call it a Mario Kart Star Trek, because Nintendo would sue you up to wazoo. But I just think the pilots are always so fun, and they don't always have the most to do. Like, they fly the ship, so they don't go on the away missions often, as we know from Ortegas. Like, I would love to see them just get a feature. Like, the best pilots of Star Trek, come on in, have a race. I don't even really care who wins. I just think it would be fun.
That would be fun. And it's, it's one that translates more into an obvious product than, like, if you got all of the doctors together, right? Like, what would they do? Try and treat a patient all at the same time, right? Or like, or you got all the engineers together. I mean, as much as I know there are some people who would absolutely love it if you got all the engineers together, it's like, what does that mean in terms of, like, a piece of entertainment? But yeah, certainly getting the pilots together, right? I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Reflections from last season's Lower Decks. So, Rutherford's a pilot too, it turns out.
Exactly. Lots of fun potential there. And short treks just have so much potential in general. That's just the one I really want to see the most.
Yeah. All right, let me tell you my theory, or it's a sort of a wish or a theory, I don't know, but this one is both Lower Decks and Enterprise related, so I thought this one would make you happy. And this is my theory for how you you unwind the events of these other voyages, and you get Enterprise into Lower Decks.
Nice.
Because, Lower Decks has had a Deep Space Nine episode last season in season 3. It has a Voyager episode coming up, which we know from the trailer, and we also know it's the season premiere. The promotional images are out, so like the season premiere is a Voyager episode, and so they've done a Deep Space Nine episode, they've done a Voyager episode. I think they should do an Enterprise episode, and of course the big question then is how do you do something like that, right? Like, it's easy to do a Deep Space Nine and a Voyager episode because those shows happened within the same part of the timeline as Lower Decks, granted slightly before, but like all those people are still kicking around. Well, Enterprise is 250 years in the past. How does that reconcile with, like, how do you do an Enterprise Lower Decks episode? Well, I think the way that you do that is you give fans what they want, which is to undo the death of Trip Tucker as depicted in the holodeck program that Riker played in these other voyages, not even necessarily like historical. And it's sort of, so one of the books, The Good That Men Do, sort of like told a story about how that sort of recontextualized these other voyages as the official narrative for those events, but that actually the real events were quite different, and they resulted in Trip Tucker faking his death to go join Section 31. That was sort of and then the Enterprise books that take place over the Romulan War, you have, the Enterprise sort of engaged in the big sort of historical, political, military stuff that's going on. And then you have Trip Tucker as an agent of Section Section 31, sort of continuing to have adventures. Well, we know that there's a Lower Decks character who last season ended up joining Section 31, that being Boimler's twin transporter clone, William Boimler. And, it occurs to me that every new Section 31 agent would probably need to go through some level of training, and who better to, give that training than a hologram of one of Section 31's most famous former agents, that being one Commander Trip Tucker. You could therefore have Connor Trenier return to reprise the role of Tucker as a Section 31 agent doing a training simulation for William Boimler. And that does three things. One, it gives you your wonderful Enterprise cameo in Lower Decks. 2, it gives fans what they want and proves that #Trip lives. And 3, also I think continues that little kernel of a story that they dropped in season 3 of Lower Decks that it would be fun to revisit. And so, yeah, I think that's my sort of wish / theory. If they wanted to give the fans some fun stuff, if they wanted to give Enterprise fans some fun stuff and do within the canon what we've always wanted them to do, which is to undo the death of Trip Tucker that we saw in these other voyages. That's my theory for how you could do it. Abby, what do you think?
Trip Tucker lives. I love this theory.
Lives.
I love this theory with all my heart. I love your theories always because they're so detailed and well thought out. I appreciate that you've put all the pieces in and covered contingencies. I hope so. And if anybody can do it, it's probably Lower Decks because they have a little more wiggle room. Because it's not quite as serious. They can throw things in there and it just kind of, you're like, oh, it's Lower Decks. Of course that worked that way. So, I hope that so much. I think that Trip getting killed there is one of the biggest injustices of all of Star Trek ever. It was not fair to his character. And I am very curious to see where the Section 31 plot goes in Lower Decks. I think it will be interesting, especially with knowing that there's a Section 31 movie on the horizon. There's a lot of pieces that could be interconnected, and we know showrunners talk. So I really, really, really hope you're right. And then as you're talking, one of my little thoughts in the back of my head goes, oh my God, what if Future Guy is actually a lower decker?
Boy, that would be something.
It would be something, but you never know. And There's so many theories about Future Guy out there. I hope at some point in my lifetime I have resolution. But, I will take Trip Tucker living in however we can do it. And Lower Decks would be the perfect way. I mean, people are resurrected there all the time. So that would be the place to do it.
Do you have a theory or a wish for Discovery, Section 31, Starfleet Academy, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, or Prodigy that you'd like to share? Tweet them to me at WeeklyTrek or email them to me at weeklytrek@thetricordertransmissions.com, and I might feature your theory in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Weekly Trek. Thank you so much to my guest, Abby Summer, for joining me today. Abby, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
My podcast is the First Flight Podcast with my wonderful co-host Chris and our co-host Emeritus Melanie. We are on the Tricorder Transmissions Network, just like where you found this wonderful show. And we are talking about each episode of Enterprise in succession. We are about 2/3 of the way through season 2, and we also drop a little bit of bonus content here and there. So as the day that we're recording this Saturday the 2nd, we just dropped an episode where we talked about all the stuff in August that we loved about Trek. So if you want to hear me talk more about that, it's on there. Otherwise, we're coming up to Judgment next, which is such a good episode of Enterprise. So come check us out. You can find us on all of the socials, literally all of them at First Flight Pod. We are doing our best to be active on all of them, but man, there's a lot of choices out there now. I hope we all just settle on where we're going. And if you want to find me personally, I am on most of the socials at Abby M. Summer. That's SOMMER.
And you can find the show on Twitter at WeeklyTrek and me at Alexander T. Perry and at Alex T. Perry everywhere else. If you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast player of choice. And please check out some of the other great shows on the Tricorder Transmissions. And if you like our shows, please also consider becoming a Patreon of Tricorder, which you can find at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And lastly, if you're looking for Star Trek news on the internet, I hope you will turn to trekcore.com. Well, thank you, Abby. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper.